Raider Nation, Shantelle Chand here, and it looks like the Raiders coaching staff is finally set. We're going to break it all down on today's episode.
Good morning, Raider Nation. I'm at Q's compound, and I'm here to talk about the skeleton coaching staff is coming together. And I am not coaching, but we'll talk about the other guys that are in line. What do you say,
That's
Q?
what I was going to say is that Lincoln's not coaching, so he stole my line. So let's just get it. It's the Raider Squad Show. Let's have some fun.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? I had to give Q and Linc a little solo there before we started if you're watching on YouTube. But if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels, and you'll see on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube the ways that you can connect with us, or you can see in the description if you're listening to this on the audio side, because you can find us there as well. Leave a rate and review. That helps the channel grow. And speaking of the channel growing, thank you so much for supporting not only the Squad Show, but Locked On Raiders. Your continued support helps the show grow, and we do appreciate you for that. Also, remember, it's an interactive show, so if you're watching this on YouTube, drop your comments, because in that fourth and final segment, Q and Linc are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. And before we break everything down, a quick shout out to our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so obviously I mentioned in that fourth segment, we're going to be getting into Q and Linc answering some of your questions and comments. And also we're going to be talking about the 2026 opponents for the Raiders in that third segment and what games to kind of look out for and how tough their actual schedule is going to be, which will be very interesting as well. But we got to get into the coaching staff, because this all came down this weekend. It was an extremely busy weekend for the Raiders, but some really good news as well. We'll start off with Mike McCoy. He is now the assistant head coach for the Raiders, coming over from the Chargers. They also promoted Rob Leonard as their DC. We're going to get into that in the second segment, because there's a lot of talk, and I feel like some of Raider Nation is a little bit split on this one, but nonetheless, we're going to break that all down. Joe Woods is also staying as a defensive pass game coordinator, so you've got some continuity there as well. And Joe DeCamillis, he's a special teams coordinator. And what's really interesting is he also worked with Klint Kubiak's father, Gary Kubiak, 10 years ago when they won that Super Bowl. So, some continuity there, he's a little bit familiar with him as well. And of course, that Kubiak name, very strong throughout the NFL. But we got to go with, obviously, their OC, Andrew Janocko. And this news, I feel like, wasn't surprising at all when you took a look at who the Seahawks had. And Linc, you're already kind of shaking your head there. Is this something that you expected as well?
Yeah, because if you're Klint Kubiak and you're coming into a new head coaching situation, you much rather cherry pick with positions or coaches from teams that you have been with or spent time with. Because let's face it, you're really putting together a skeleton crew. This late in the game, with everything, these staffs being decided, and really the Raiders are the last one to pick their head coach. Now you're really going around cherry picking as to who you can elevate and who you can get from other teams as a possible hire. But you much rather do it from a familiarity standpoint and not necessarily taking a chance on a new guy. So I wasn't surprised what we've seen happen over the weekend. What about you?
No, not at all. Janocko was one of those guys that we all expected from the jump was going to be along with Kubiak. He's been with them in Minnesota. He was with them in New Orleans. He was with them in Seattle. No shock at all. He's with them with the Raiders. Now, the one thing about that is that he was actually interviewing in Seattle to be the OC there under Mike Macdonald and had an opportunity to call plays, where obviously with the Raiders he won't call plays because Klint Kubiak will do that. But he didn't get that job. Once I saw the fact that the Seahawks went out of the building and went and hired the 49ers tight end coach to be their OC, I thought immediately, all right, well, Janocko's going to Vegas. And then I think it was like 20 minutes later, all of a sudden, hey, Janocko's in Las Vegas and finalizing the deal. I was like, yeah, that was easy to connect those dots. But those are guys that are very familiar with each other, so they're going to know exactly what they're going to want to do. Obviously, he's a guy that's well respected by Klint Kubiak, or he wouldn't have been with them for the 4 different stops now. So yeah, I think that made all the sense of the world, and that was the one that I think everyone anticipated was going to happen once Klint Kubiak got hired.
I also want to point out that the titles are sort of really paper thin. I mean, to be honest, because you go and watch these coaching staffs in action, and they have so many other responsibilities other than just being a coordinator, defense or offense. And then, of course, it comes down to who's calling plays. We all assume that Klint Kubiak's going to call plays.
Yep.
And if he doesn't, if he has an offensive coordinator like Janocko up in the booth or on the sidelines with him, he's going to have heavy influence on that. But during my tenure and my time through this league, and especially working on this side of the camera with the media, I've seen, offensive run game specialists, offensive passing game specialists. You've heard all of these technical terms. So I when it comes to titles, I really think they're paper thin.
Yeah, and you mentioned how Klint Kubiak is going to be calling the plays most likely. What are your thoughts on that, Q? And do you like when a coach is calling the plays like the head coach is calling the offensive plays?
It's so funny because I didn't like that for the longest time. I always thought that it made more sense to have somebody that was their specialty, just calling the plays. But the way that the league has shifted now, the majority of the league, the head coaches call the plays. I believe there's 17 coaches now across the league that are offensive minded that call the plays, and there's 7 that are defensive minded. So in a league that only has 32 teams, you do the math, right? The majority of the league, their head coach is calling the plays. So I guess with the way that everything is shifted and the way that guys have been able to start to adapt, it's fine. My preference, but that was, like I said, quite a while ago, was to have someone be the CEO type and then have someone be the offensive play caller and defensive play caller. But like I said, everyone's kind of doing it right now. So that's the trendy thing to do. So why not? And look, this is the reason why Klint Kubiak got the job. He was in his bag all season long there in Seattle. We saw the way that offense was constructed. We saw the way that offense was out there executing. So that's why you brought him in. So you might as well have him do that. He confirmed that on Tuesday that he was going to be calling the plays. But to his point, he said, look, I've never called a game by myself. There's a lot of different guys that play a role in what we do. So, yeah, I might be technically calling it in, to the quarterback to go out there and execute. But there's a lot of people in this process that help it out.
Keep in mind, I'm old. So I'm what you call beyond old school. I'm prehistoric school. I've never liked a head coach calling plays, offense, defense. I've always thought a head coach should be a game manager, but that's what I was used to. That's what I came up and saw. But I will say this, young head coaches who getting their first chance or getting their first shot, I mean, I think it comes with the territory, to be honest with you, because you think about it. The first young head coach I had the pleasure of playing with was John Gruden. He came in and called the passing game. Bill Callahan called the running game. They worked together to call the offensive game plan. But Gruden was calling the plays. That was the first time I experienced a head coach calling plays. Since then, the trend has become, much to Q and you guys are speaking about the guys calling their own plays. And look, I get it. If you're a young head coach, first year doing a head coach, I get it. This is your pride and joy. You want to put your best foot forward. That's why so many head coaches change so many things with teams that they come on, because they want to have their guys in place that can run their system, because that's what they got hired on. That's what the basis. And they don't want to leave it up to anybody else. But much to Q's point, I see Klint sort of creating a collusion amongst the minds that he has in him to put together and develop a prominent game plan going into the season, and more importantly, developing a game plan based on other people's expertise input. So I think it goes hand in hand with today's game.
Now, obviously, Andrew Janocko, though, this is also his first OC job as well in the league. So, Q, just hearing that, like,
exactly, that's right there, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, we talked about titles and everything like that, but it's still like that's still his position. It's his first time doing that. So, what are the pressures that come with being the OC? But he's not going to be fully calling the plays. But what type of pressure is he going to be dealing with, knowing that's his first time in that role?
I don't really think he has any pressure, to be honest. I just think he goes and does what he's been doing, right? I mean, again, that's the beauty of him and Klint Kubiak being on the same page and working together now at 4 different locations. They know each other like the back of their hands, right? So I know what he expects, like I expect Lincoln to do a certain thing. Lincoln expects me to do a certain thing. Like we know each other so well that it doesn't matter what you call me. It doesn't matter what my title is. I'm going to go and do my role. I'm going to do my job. And so they're going to collaborate on everything together. Obviously, there's going to be more coaches on the offensive side as well. So I don't think there's really going to be any pressure. I think he's just going to have to continue to do what he does. If he was going to have pressure, it would be, in my point, if he was calling the plays, because then it's, that's the ultimate chess match, right? You're calling a play in the first quarter to set up something in the fourth quarter, right? I mean, it's you're trying to stay 2-3 steps ahead of the defense. And so that to me would have been a little bit more pressure, but without him calling the plays, I think it's just business as usual.
The way I see this dynamic sort of playing out, we all assume that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the first pick of the draft, right? What better way to have a quarterback or a quarterback coach who's familiar with your system to work with Fernando while you're putting together all the other pieces and managing a team? I think it just creates a great synergy within the office when you have a guy who's familiar with you and you're familiar with, that you can say, hey, let's go do this. Let's work on this. Let's work on this. I expect a lot of things about Fernando's game to be changed when he comes to the next level, just out of pure necessity. I don't see him running a lot of RPOs on this level as he did in college. With that being said, you have to develop. I hate to use that word but you have to either have a lot of player to make the transition to a pro game or pro style offense, more to Klint Kubiak's vision, and he also has to run the team. So there are other things and responsibilities that he should be able to have a teammate like Q and I working together. Q, go take care of this while I'm doing this. And then we come together and we find a way. So again, we go back to those titles. I think it plays in the fact when you have a staff that you're familiar with, and they're familiar with you, with your ideology and what you expect and what you're hoping to achieve, that you can say, go handle this for me right now. I'll take care of the other stuff. And
the good thing is having Mike McCoy on the staff as well. I mean, he's a guy that's been there, done that. He's been a head coach. He was in Tennessee last year, was the interim coach, and, helped work with Cam Ward, the number 1 overall pick. Going back to Lincoln's point, I think that's going to help with Fernando Mendoza being the number 1 overall pick, rookie quarterback, just trying to get him used to the NFL game. So I think that all this familiarity, Kubiak, Janocko, you got Mike McCoy there as well. I think it helps ease him into the NFL a little bit better as well. So I think that, with a lot of new, there's also some veterans in there that's been there, done that. So that's going to really help out, at least with the, at least early on, trying to get acclimated to what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and Mike McCoy, I think he brings over like 2 decades of that NFL experience. So he's a veteran in this league. And I think you guys both talked about pairing a young head coach, obviously in his first role, with a veteran coach as well. So that could be a great pairing. What are your thoughts about him coming over from the Chargers and how that might kind of be a little bit of a plus, Linc?
Well, I mean, you elevate him by promoting him, giving him assistant head coach position, a title. So you don't have to compensate the Chargers person. It's an elevation higher. So it makes sense to me. But I also think because, Klint Kubiak's been around football his life, whether he's relying on his father, his brothers, or other people within the family tree, or even his influence of where he coached at with the Shanahans and so on and so forth. This is a good deal. This is a smart move to bring in a veteran coach in the National Football League that has been around. Now, the game has changed. The players have changed. The salary cap situation, everything has changed. But to bring in a veteran head coach who's been there, done that, seen that, probably has the experience to help tutor you as you grow into this position, because you don't just wake up and say, you know what, I'm a head coach of a professional football team, especially one of the status of the Raiders. I know we haven't won many games, but there's still history there, and there's still a prideful bunch towards that. So, it's good to have influence from all around, take it in, help build you up as a coach. It's just being smart.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there's familiarity with the division. Right. I mean, that's when you look at it, McCoy worked with Phillip Rivers. He's worked with Cam Ward. He's going to work with Fernando Mendoza if the Raiders take him. I mean, he's been there, done that. So knowing the division, knowing what it's all about, knowing the Chiefs, knowing obviously the Raiders, and the Broncos as well. I mean, he'll be able to help, like I said, navigate kind of the waters. Obviously, there's a lot of Denver influence on this coaching staff as well. There's Denver influence in the front office as well. So, I mean, again, the first thing you got to do is try to find a way to win your division, right? I'm not saying the Raiders are going to do that this year, but that's the ultimate goal. You got to win your division, and then you worry about everything else. So as long as you have coaches that are familiar with your division and know what it's all about, I feel like that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the division and the 2026 opponents in that third segment. So good tee up there, Q. Always working, always working, even when he doesn't have to do the host role. So that's what you just call Q knows ball, right? Q knows ball. So another person that I wanted to ask you about, obviously, special teams, I feel like was a surprise for me this past season, because I felt like it was something for the Raiders that was always pretty strong. And then, this past season was an absolute mess. And we kind of saw what happened. You bring in a guy like Joe DeCamillis, who has so much experience as well in the league. And you're kind of, if you think about it, it's a lot of young coaches that they're pairing with veterans as well. Q, what are your thoughts on just the staff that they've put together as a whole?
Well, I think it's a good staff so far, right? There's still some heavy lifting that they've got to do, but DeCamillis having 31 years of NFL experience, I mean, hell, he's got almost as much NFL experience as Kubiak has days alive. I mean, he's only 38, and he's got 31 years of NFL experience. Look, the one thing that Kubiak said to us on Tuesday when he met with the media was he wanted coaches that were going to rip into guys if they weren't finishing practice the right way, if they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, if they weren't, the effort wasn't there. Well, DeCamillis, I don't know if you've seen, but I mean, he has no problem, letting it be known how he feels, right? Whether that's to the media, whether that's to the players. He's one of those no-nonsense ball coaches. Like, he's a ball coach's ball coach, right? He's one of those guys, old school special teams coordinators, and those guys are cut from a different cloth, right? Those guys, especially the old school ones, they're really about their business. They're about dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I'm pretty excited about that hire, because like you said, special teams last year wasn't very special for the Raiders, and that has been a unit that has been pretty stinking good. But last year it just wasn't. I also hope that that's going to mean that the return game is going to be a little bit better. I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit more creative. You're going to see better blocking up front. You're going to see the Raiders have better opportunity to have a better field position. But just the whole special teams unit just really being kind of buttoned up. I think that's going to help. And a guy like that's a veteran, been around there, been there, done that, is going to help out and just brings another veteran to a very young coaching staff.
Based on the comments that Coach Kubiak said about his staff, I would have thought they would have brought back Rich Bisaccia. Be honest with
right.
you. Wow. Talking about someone who's holding accountable, familiar with the organization and familiar with these players these days. Look, special teams are just as the title says, special. I mean, it really is, because you've got to have veterans who are willing to go lay themselves on the line to play special teams. A special team standout is going to put himself in the Pro Bowl, but that's just, you'll have a small amount of plays where you're going to have that one or two guys that stand out. And special teams are just they're ever evolving. Yep. There's some talk about them taking away the onside kick and just going for the 4th and 13. They're ever changing this. So I know that's another thing that coaches have to look out for with today's players, how to get these guys animated and sort of attracted to the possibility of going out there and playing special teams when you have your starting linebacker or your starting safety or something like that. A lot of guys don't want to do it. And a lot of these guys just to feel that they have the say where they can't do it. So getting that, motivating those players is an art in itself.
Yeah, and coming up on the other side, we're going to get into the defensive side of the ball and Rob Leonard's promotion. So that's coming up on the other side. Remember, in that fourth and final segment, Q and Linc are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, get your questions and comments in. We'll talk to you on the other side. Keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. Finding a doctor you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. Sure, you want someone who's in network, nearby, and has availability, but you also want a doctor who listens, makes you feel comfortable, and explains things clearly. That kind of doctor exists, and finding them is easy with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network across all 50 states, covering over 200 specialties for primary care and dentistry to dermatology and eye care. And I'll admit, I definitely put off some doctor's appointments before, a lot longer, hard to get an appointment sometimes, but between work, life, and everything else, it's pretty easy to use this app. So stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL, one word. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, please hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. And keep in mind that the Locked On Network is the #1 sports podcasting network. And obviously, a lot of that has to do with your continued support. So thanks so much for supporting the show. It continues to grow. So obviously, I think this is something that you guys both predicted, and that was that Rob Leonard would probably get promoted to DC. And I think both of you said if he wasn't going to get promoted, there was going to be another team that would pretty much pick him off at one point. So he gets the promotion. So Linc, just your thoughts on him getting the promotion and how big this is for him, and also the continuity for the defense as well.
I thought it was big for the defense because it allows you to win over the possibility of Maxx Crosby and then all the commotion that was surrounding him. He has a familiarity. I'm sure he talked to Maxx about staying and of course he also brought, his tutelage and his coaching has brought out good production out of the defensive line for what it's worth now. And of course, hiring within has always been a motivating factor for me. I've always thought you should hire from within because players are familiar with coaches. They don't want to necessarily get to know a new personality, a new ideology, a new philosophy, a new coaching style. If you're familiar with coaches, it allows you to say, you know what, that's one less thing I have to worry about. Let me get ready for this upcoming season. So I thought it made sense. Now, there's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, they've got to fix the secondary system. Whatever coverage system they decide to run or how aggressive they decide to be, that's going to be up to Rob Leonard. I don't know how much play calling experience he has. So it might be a coaching carousel for him as well, and bringing in other coaches that can try to help, maybe an expert on the defensive side to help give him some advice. But it's really good to see guys get elevated, work hard, and get elevated. I've always thought highly of Rob, and seeing has his work ethic out there in the football field. So I'm always, congratulating, good job. Now you have to do something with it now that you're here. The Raiders defense has shown some production. I know it hasn't translated into wins, but it has been a solid defense. They've been solid against the run. They've been solid in sack production. Look at Kuntz. Kuntz had a good solid year, even though we didn't call his name as much as Maxx Crosby. Had a solid year coming off of that injury. So, I mean, there's opportunities there to elevate that young coach and to promote these young players in that familiarity. I think that continuity runs strong.
Yeah, I always liked Robbie Leonard a lot. I really did. I always thought that he was a guy that was going to at some point get a defensive coordinator job somewhere. And I know that the Raiders have blocked him the last couple of years from other teams that wanted to interview him and take him to their organization. They blocked him. And so now his hard work pays off. I was happy to see him get that job. I don't believe that Maxx Crosby is the only reason that he got that job. I know some people are speculating that because of the relationship. I don't think it hurts, right? I don't think it hurts in the quest to keep Maxx Crosby, but I don't think that's the only reason that he gets this job. He's a guy that has familiarity with Mike Macdonald, so he knows that kind of defense. I don't think we'll see the Patrick Graham defense. I don't think we'll see what we saw from PG. I think we'll see a blend of what Mike Macdonald does. He also learned from Brian Flores when his time in Miami. He spent time with the Giants organization. I mean, Robbie Leonard's got a lot of coaching experience. Now, he doesn't have the play calling experience, so that might be, trial by fire here and there. There's going to be times that I'm sure he's probably going to want to call or two back, just as all coaches do, but trying to get, familiar with his job. But I think he's a guy that's definitely up for the job. And a lot of folks, even this time around, were trying to talk to him, and the Raiders, fended them off and gave him that promotion. I think that's a big deal. That also lets you know if you're on the coaching staff and you work your tail off, you can also continue to climb, right? And that's what everyone wants to do for the most part. Everyone wants to have that opportunity to move up in the ranks. And so instead of just pigeonholing him and keeping him at a defensive line job, he has opportunity now to be the DC. So, a guy that's been a linebacker coach multiple times, he's kind of that. If you watch him during training camp, and I know Lincoln has, he's fired up. He's one of those guys, again, going back to what Kubiak said, doesn't mind ripping into guys if their effort's not there. Oh, he's going to teach effort for sure. So
when you talk about defensive coordinators, they're more reactionary.
Yep.
They do it based on formations. They do it based on personnel. A lot of times it's a sight, see, and adjust where you have to call on the fly. Offensive coordinators have the ability to sit there and predict and project. Okay, if this is 3rd down and 2, this is what I'm going to call. 3rd down and 5. Okay, if we get to this position, are we going to go for it based on coach, analytics? Coach, can I go for it on 4th down? Give you the freedom to sort of, adjust and maybe call a different play here and there. So offensive coordinator and defensive coordinators, 2 different mentalities. More times than not, depending on where Robbie Leonard wants to be, Coach Leonard wants to be, whether it's up in the booth or down on the sideline, he will go off of the energy of what he sees and feels, and more importantly, the response, if he's up in the booth, response that his staff is saying, hey, how are the guys doing out there? Do we need to roll this defensive line? Do we need to do something? Which adjusts his play calling. So you got to be able to adjust on the fly and be quick with it. It's anyone's guess how you're going to be able to call a defensive game throughout the game. And he might want to give up some of the responsibilities or might have a collaborative effort much on the offensive side with Coach Kubiak. We don't know. It's time in his position. But as Q's mentioned, his experience of being around the league, he got a chance to soak that up and to see how other coaches do that. So I think he'll be really good for the position.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. I want to go back to Q, what you kind of said in terms of, you don't think you're going to see like a PG style defense, but you do think it's going to be bits of McDonald and Flores because, he's been around and had some experience of being around both of them who've been great. However, when it comes to scheme, what type of scheme do you think we might see from him?
That's a good question, and only time will tell. I just think that you're going to see a combination of what both those guys, those coordinators, do really well, McDonald and Flores, because he learned from them. So I just think that that's what you're going to see. You always see him, like I said, really fiery with the defensive line whenever we're watching the drills there at training camp and just seeing the way that he interacts with all the players and leading the charge and hustling them from station to station. So I'm not 100% sure what the scheme is going to look like. But I also go back to what Klint Kubiak said in February. They're not worried about the scheme. They're worried about the effort. They're worried about, guys doing things the right way and setting the right foundation. And he said the scheme and the X's and O's will work itself out. It's all about the effort. It's all about the attitude. It's the way that they come to work and prepare every day. So that to me is just the kind of sense of tone. If you look at all the different coaches that have been hired so far, they're all those kind of, not rah-rah guys, but guys that'll get after it, right? And Robbie Leonard is no different. So, it'll be interesting to see exactly what it looks like. I just don't think that you're going to see, a lot of the soft zones that you saw a lot of times. You saw a lot of the middle of the field being open. I think that Robbie Leonard understands that and recognizes the weaknesses that they've had in their defenses over the past few years. He's been with the Raiders for a handful of years now. So I think that he'll be able to, make some tweaks and adjustments to it to try to better protect, like I said, especially the middle of the field. It seems like it's always wide open.
Based on the personnel that is currently on this roster, they can't play a 3-high zone scheme. They don't have that ability. They can't even play a single high zone scheme with man coverage underneath. They don't have that ability. But based on the personnel, I think it's a combination of much of what Q is talking about. It's anyone's guess how you're going to do. But more importantly, here's the thing. What I've seen sort of a tendency that's happened around the league, especially with these young quarterbacks, is experienced defensive coordinators have been able to trick these quarterbacks into delaying their inevitable reads because they've shown man and rotated to zone. Shown zone and rotated to man, had some sort of variations within and combination coverages. With that being said, it's anyone's guessing game because everything is on the fly. And for so many years, offenses were predicated on pre-snap decisions by experienced quarterbacks. When you had this sort of rush of young quarterbacks, it wasn't like the coach laid it out. You see a single high safety, this is where we're going to go. You see 2 high safety, this is where we're going to go. You see off coverage, this is where we're going to go because teams have changed. Snapping the ball. Even there have been various variations committed to Tampa 2 defense, which was a prominent defense in the way that it's been ran. But you got to have linebackers who can get back in that middle part of the zone. You have to have safeties that can cover the field. More importantly, if you have a single high safety, he's got to be able to go sideline to sideline. That's a rarity. You don't see that a lot. You don't see that possibility a lot. More importantly, your linebackers have got to be able to cover backs out of the backfield or strong tight ends. So you see a lot more press and up in your face type of coverage, which gives you room to the deep ball. That's where safety experience comes in. So it's anyone's guess how you do the combination and how you might rotate the combination during the game plan, and especially the quarterback you're playing. But I just think they don't have the personnel to play all man. They don't have the personnel to play all zone. They can't do one way or the other like Seattle is all of these teams that we're talking about have all generated pressure with their front four.
Yep.
It's been responsive. So what I've noticed when it comes to defensive line tendencies around the league, there's a massive rotation with those defensive line. You get those guys, you try to keep them fresh as much as possible. But if a team runs the ball on them, it's hard to keep them fresh because they stand out there a lot longer. And you put them in second and third down long situations, advantage defense.
The good thing about this is, though, the Raiders have so many free agents that they might not have the personnel right now on February 16th, but doesn't mean that the personnel can't be there.
True story.
Right? They have an opportunity where instead of a lot of teams that come in and say, all right, this guy doesn't fit, cut him. They got like 23 or 24 free agents. Right. So, it's going to kind of work itself out in the wash. Like, I don't think they have a linebacker under contract right now. Outside of Cody Lindenberg and Tommy Eichenberg. Right. Because E-Rob, that was a 1-year deal. Devin White, 1-year deal. Jamal Adams, 1-year deal. You get it. There's not a lot of, guys that are coming back. Guys like Eric Stokes, right? He was a 1-year deal. He's a free agent. He might come back. Like, we've done shows where we talk about what free agents do you think are coming back? Out of 22 or 23, like 1 or 2? Like, I just see a complete total roster turnover. And that, to me, is what's going to really be intriguing about all this. So when you start to see these coaches put in place, you start to think about the Raiders roster. And to Lincoln's point, they don't have the personnel for this, that, and the other right now, but doesn't mean that they can't work towards that because, again, this is going to be a completely flipped roster anyway.
And Vrabel, look, the New England Patriots brought in 30 free agents this past year.
Yeah.
That committed to their team, and they made a run
30.
after winning 4 games the year before. So there's a possibility of doing that, and I don't have a problem. If I was a general manager, I don't have a problem with prove-it contracts. I have never had a problem with prove-it contracts. If you can get an established free agency to commit to a prove-it contract, I think you're better off because you get to see what that free agency has.
The best of them.
Exactly. Yeah. More times than not, you see guys who are chasing those free agent contracts trying to get those big paydays, and you run a gauntlet if you have a long-term contract of getting the type of production that the guy showed the teams that he was on before. Now he might just be, sitting back and chilling. Look, I got my money. I'm cool. That type of philosophies. But so these prove-it contracts, I've never had a problem with getting the best out of them. And it's also to be expected. a new coaching staff, you're really going to have a new team.
Yep.
Don't give away the nucleus that we've seen so many times. You know, when Gruden came over, gave away Khalil Mack, gave away Amari Cooper. Yes, he got picks in response because he was trying to build his team, but he gave away the identity. And there's been so many times that we gave away the identity over the last couple of years with Merrick and Josh Jacobs and all these guys. You know, Spillman going to look. You don't want to have to do that all the time, but I understand there's going to be some times where you're going to have some new faces out there, and it's to be expected.
Yeah, and you know it's really interesting because I feel like Raider Nation was kind of split on this hire, just being on Twitter and reading a bunch of comments. But in terms of, you know, what Rob Leonard has done in developing a lot of the players on the D line, Q, how much credit should he get for that and the players that he's helped develop?
I think he gets a lot of credit. I mean, you know, my perfect example is going back to 2024 when Christian Wilkins went down after 5 games and Maxx Crosby went down after 12, and the defensive line was still pretty good. Right, you saw Adam Butler have some moments, right, and really earned a contract extension. You see other guys step it up, right? I mean, obviously Kuntz didn't play that year because of the torn ACL, but you see other guys being able to develop. Jonah Laulu, right? I mean, he was a guy that you saw him play just for a handful of games. You're like, you know what? I think this young man's got something. And then you saw what he did this year. Just look at the rookies this year. Look at Tonka Hemingway. What do you have? 4 sacks in 4.5 games, or right. You know what I mean? Like he's able to get the most out of the defensive lineman. Now I know some will say, well, yeah, but what about Tyree Wilson? He hasn't developed. I mean, there's nothing I can say about that. He just has not developed into a consistent player that he was supposed to be when they drafted him number 7 overall. Guess what? He might not ever develop into that. I don't know. But to Lincoln's point, he's in a contract year now. Right. So if there's any time that he's going to do it, it would be now.
And he did play better towards the end of last year, for what it's worth. I mean, it's a team that only had 3 wins. So, I mean, for what it's worth, you know, it is what it is. But, you know, there is so much pressure coming on a first-round draft choice, especially a top 10 draft choice. Don't care what team you're on. There's so much pressure because everyone is focused on him. You're the big name. You're the big draw. You were the big ticket. Why aren't you doing more? Well, that's tongue-in-cheek. What do you mean doing more? You know what I mean? What does that mean? If I'm not sacking every day, am I not being productive? If I'm not another Maxx Crosby, I'm not being productive. Look, there's only one Maxx Crosby.
Right.
You know, there's only one Myles Garrett. There's only one Micah out there. So don't think that you can duplicate it or have it on the other side. If you do, you create a terror and you go on for a long ride. Look at Seattle's defense, the production they had, not only from their outside ends, but also their defensive tackles. Solid defense, solid production out of their front 4, which allowed them to play that complicated man-zone matchup on the back end. And really create some difficulties for opposing offenses. And they had good play out of their corners. So it's a team effort. It's a combination of guys out there, not just one guy taking over.
Yeah. And, you know, we talk a little bit about continuity, and obviously the Raiders decided to have that continuity when it came to the defense as well, not only keeping Robbie Leonard, but also Joe Wood staying as a defensive pass game coordinator. What do you think that kind of just says in terms of the Raiders not only being loyal to the guys that are on the coaching staff, elevating them in terms of giving them a promotion, but keeping that continuity for players? And, you know, we mentioned Maxx a little bit, but at the same time, what does it mean for a guy like Maxx to know that, you know, 2 guys that he has been around are still going to be there, despite the fact that there has been so much turnover for the coaching staff, Q?
I think it's just comfortable. You know, I think he's just, like I said, familiar with the coaches, and especially Robbie Leonard, since he's, you know, worked with him directly. I think that is a big deal. And, you know, it'll help kind of keep the language the same language. I mean, these coaches all coach basically the same thing, but they go about it and they talk about it a different way, right? The language is always different. So instead of more terminology that Maxx may have to learn, he doesn't have to. You know, Robbie Leonard's going to be that guy. The other thing, I think that Robbie Leonard knows how to get the most out of Maxx and understands that his best skill set is not dropping in coverage. His best skill set is always attacking the quarterback, attacking the runner, right? I don't need to see 98 dropping in coverage.
Right,
I'm not the smartest guy in the world. that kind of, if I'm the offense and I see 98 dropping in coverage, that's a win. Straight up, like, okay, cool. At least we don't have to worry about that guy. All we got to do is not throw him the ball, right? And so that to them is a win. I just, like I said, it just, to me, it feels like it's comfortable. It's familiarity, right? It's a guy that's been there, done that, knows how to, you know, to get the most out of these players, and the players understand who these coaches are. So to me, it's not a huge deal, but it's nothing to, you know, not look at it either.
It's a reward for the player.
There you go.
When you have a system that you're comfortable with, that you know like the back of your hand. And I've had a handful of systems when I was able to not have to worry about my responsibility because I knew it. When I go to the line of scrimmage, I knew my responsibility. The simplicity of Gruden's system allowed me to excel as a player. That's what got me to Pro Bowls. That's what got me all-pro status. I walked to the line. I knew what I had every single time. And it didn't matter what audible I had. I knew what I had every single time. I was familiar with Rich Gannon when he had his audibles. I was familiar with Gruden calling games. I was familiar with Callahan calling run games. I was familiar with all of that. It allowed me to excel as a player, to be more comfortable. Keep in mind, the less they do up here, the better they do out there. I don't want you to think. I want it to be muscle memory. I want you to go. I want you to react. And I want you to react 100 miles per hour as fast as you possibly can. Being comfortable in a system, being comfortable with the coach, being comfortable when you walk into a building, like we got practice today. Okay, I know my responsibilities are. We got a game today. Okay, I know my responsibilities are. I'm not guessing. A new guy coming off the street. What are you? Who are you? Okay, why are you calling it that way? Okay, now I'm thinking much. Now I'm thinking, even if you say Lincoln, see ball, get ball. Now I'm thinking, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? I know what my last coach meant by that, but what do you mean by that? That type of thing. And so taking less out of this and putting more into here, just go out there and play, man. I know you, Q. I know you, man. Just go out there and talk your game. Go out and do what you do and do your show. You know, if I was producing Q, I don't have to train him. I don't have to teach anything he does. Q, do what you do. I got your back. What do you need from me? That type of thing. That's that sort of harmonious relationship between the player and coach. Just take all the thinking out and go out and play. The more familiar you are with the guy that you're coaching you or the guy next to you, the better off you are as a player.
Think a man is a slow man.
Absolutely.
No, that's definitely true. But I also want to get into how you guys both mentioned, well, I think Linc mentioned how, they don't really have the personnel to run cover 2. I didn't even think they had the personnel to run cover 3 because they're one-on-one on the outside and like the guys can't cover on the outside. So when we come to the point of the season where, it's the off season and now the coaching staff is kind of set. Now they're going to be looking to the combine, free agency, and then the draft. So we have a bunch of things that are coming up, but we talk about the personnel that the Raiders have. How important do you think it is for the Raiders to really address the secondary?
Man, it's critical. It's critical. The Raiders have always been an organization that have had some just to be blunt about it, some badass corners, right? I mean, they've always had some corners that could get up in your grill, bump and run, right? Beat you up at the line of scrimmage. They were guys that could take the ball away, go the other way with it. The Raiders have been, that's who the Raiders are, right? I mean, that's just, you just go through the list of all the HOFers that have come from the Raiders organization that played that corner position. The Raiders haven't had that guy that other teams are scared to throw his way in a very long time, right? I think Eric Stokes did a good job this year, and he had no turnovers, none. Right, Darian Porter, I think he has the skill set, but he's very young at the position. Right, I mean, you see other guys. Caillou Blue Kelly, I think he's a good story, but I don't think that he's consistently that guy. Right, Darnay Holmes, okay, in the slot, cool, but again, not consistent. Greedy Vance, great name for a DB. Hasn't really turned into that guy yet. The back end, Isaiah Pull-Him-Out, I like how he got it through the mud. Right, the way that the guy's an undrafted free agent, earned his contract extension, that was great. Right, I think Jeremy Chinn's a very versatile guy, but none of those guys I just rattled off are those dudes that you're like, yep, that's the guy you got to stay away from. They just don't have that impact player. The Raiders need to go and get an impact DB or two, right? Somebody that could really be aggressive at the line of scrimmage. Me personally, like cover 3 is cool because as a DB, you want to be able to, kind of locate the ball and have a chance to go make a play on it. But I really want to see them get back to their old school man-to-man, beat you up at the line of scrimmage, Nnamdi Asomugha you up, right? I mean, just what you got to do. And then be a willing tackler too. Like that's what I really enjoy because then you can throw off the whole plan of if you're beating them up at the line of scrimmage, you're throwing off the whole timing of the route. And if you hold them up for a second longer than they're supposed to be held up, everything is thrown off. And that's how turnovers happen. So I would like to get them back to that old bump and run style of defense. I'm not saying that they're going to do that, but my preference would be that.
Hugh, remind me, I've had too many hits in the head. Who was the first round pick we got from Ohio State, the DB that wasn't?
Garyon Conley?
No. I mean, years ago when he gun guy online got kicked out of the league for flashing.
Oh, Damon Arnett.
All right.
Yeah.
Case in point. Ohio State ran a lot of bump and run when Arnett was in college.
Yep.
Okay. They ran a lot of man corner, much to Q's point, aggressive style defense when Arnett was in college. The Raiders picked him in the first round and they wanted him to run zone coverage. Fish out of water. You've taken him out of his element. I don't care what type of athlete he is. Now he's uncomfortable because he's learning a new system. I say that to say this. Be mindful. Obviously, you have to figure a system that's conducive to the players you have and also the players you want, because you do have money to spend in free agency and you do have the draft coming up. So with that being said, be mindful and conducive that you have an ideology, you have a thought how you want to play it, whatever coverage it may be. Might be a combination of 4 and 3. Who knows? I mean, there's so many here. There's 6. There's, you run in sky. I mean, there's all things that you can do, but have a philosophy that you do and draft or address it accordingly based on what you're trying to create. Don't take a fish out of water. That's my big point. Don't make a stretch. Oh, he's a great athlete. Let's make him this. No. If you haven't seen him do that, don't make him do that on this level, because I don't believe in developing players. I believe in you taking their strengths. There's a reason why these guys succeed in college. You hardly ever hear of a guy getting drafted high off of a losing college franchise.
Right.
Why is that? They did something right. So don't take them in and don't try to make them what they're not. And don't try to create a system that's not conducive to the players that you have. If there's something that you foresee that you want to do, okay, I want to sit here and run a cover 2. I want to run it too high. I want to have a single high safety. I want to be able to run bump and run coverage, man on coverage underneath, because I know I want to give my defensive line a chance to get there. Then draft and address it accordingly. Do it that way. Be smart about it. Don't try to, put a round peg in a square hole. It just doesn't work. So, be mindful. And that's why I just want these coaching staffs to be smart.
Other thing about that is guys that don't take the ball away in college probably aren't going to take the ball away in the pros either.
It's that much harder.
It's just that much harder. So, I mean, it's, again, muscle memory. If you're a guy that's used to see ball, get ball, and you do that in the high school ranks, you'll probably do it in college. If you do it in the college ranks, guess what? You'll probably find a way to do it in the pros. But if you don't, that's just not who you are, right? And the Raiders need to start getting into the habit of getting guys that have a mindset on taking the ball the other way. And that's just another element of the team that they have had great success with over the years, but they haven't had it in quite a while. And Eric Allen says all the time that, old man Willie Shaw used to always say 20 interceptions this season. We're going to put 20 interceptions. Who's going to go get them? Who's going to be the guys that go get them? Look at the numbers of interceptions they've had the past couple of years. 9, 8, 10, 11, 7. You know what I mean? Like very, very minimal numbers. The Raiders as a team don't take the ball away very often. That is an element that they've got to get back to. They've got to get back to getting a couple ball hawks on that side of the ball that's ready to see ball and get ball. The last guy that really did it at a high level, Charles Woodson.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why he's got a gold jacket.
Yeah, even in his second stint, he was still getting takeaways, right?
He had what? When he came back to the Raiders, he had what, 8?
Yeah.
8 interceptions himself. The Raiders had like 8 interceptions last year. You know what I mean? Like they just don't create turnovers. And that is one of the biggest things that's ailing them. And last year, if you go back and look at some of the interceptions, who got them? Devin White got one. Maxx Crosby got one. Who else got one? Isaiah. I think he got one. Again, one. Right? I mean, it just wasn't. It just didn't happen for the Raiders very often. And I don't know why that's been such a problem for them, such a bugaboo, but they just don't create turnovers.
Well, I'll tell you why, Q. The more times than not, when you have a young corner out there there's sometimes you're looking at across the line at the name that they're playing against, they're kind of awestruck. They want to try to do everything right. They're not necessarily looking for the ball.
Yeah.
They're looking to play man. But what hurts me is when you have a guy who can't run like a cover 2 properly, and you see cover 2 beaters teams use against the Raiders all the time. You don't know how to run a cover 2. There's no reason for you to stay in the flat if there's no receiver back there.
Right.
Drift back.
Yep.
Take away that deep out option or that deep corner option, or make it harder for that quarterback to throw that. Don't just stay on the line of scrimmage. What are you staying on the line of scrimmage for? There's nobody there.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but you have to be mindful of how to run that type of system. Those that take chances, those that you see corners last year for different teams that take chances, more times than not are getting interceptions or tipping balls. There were times where Geno Smith threw into cover. Teams knew that where he wanted to go with the football. They peel off and they right there for an interception. So you got to be mindful. There are also times when you have an aggressive corner who knows the route running structure of a receiver that he's playing against so well that he'll run the route for the receiver. Right there for an interception. That is an aggressive corner. That's aggressive defensive back that takes on the system and, more importantly, takes a chance. If they get beat over the top, if it's a big catch, you'll have announcers like me like, oh, you took a risk, but you got to make sure you pick off that ball if you're going to jump that route like that. We saw that to start the Super Bowl. The first three plays that Darnold had should have been interceptions.
Yeah.
They had players right there in position that would have probably changed the game that way. The way Seattle was reading not Darnold, the other quarterback, the young quarterback, I'm drawing on the blank. Drake May.
Yeah.
Darnold when he was out there for the first series. But the way Seattle was playing, the way New England was playing Seattle's receivers, they were jumping the routes because they knew how Darnold was a gunslinger.
Yep.
They knew that he would take a risk, much like Brett Favre and stuff like that did in the past. And sometimes that works against you. For Seattle, the fact that they were bailed out by their defense and they were able to win that game. Offense didn't do a whole lot to win that game, but defense was able to keep them in it to where they wore down the opposing team. That's just great complementary play. I say that to say this: when you come to defensive backs and it comes to interceptions, more times than not, that defensive back has got to be able to willing to take a chance. More times that comes with experience rather than youth. The Raiders have got a good nucleus of young defensive backs. They need to figure out how to get the best out of them before they get rid of them and move on.
Yeah, and we're going to see what the Raiders actually do when it comes to the draft, free agency, and I think they're going to probably look to get some DBs in that draft instead of, spending too much money in free agency, because they got to focus on Linc Q. You'll like this, the O-line, right? They got to spend their money on the O-line. But coming up on the other side, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Raiders' 2026 opponents and how tough that schedule is. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raiders Squad Show. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you a chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. So here's how it works. You use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered to win a shot to win a trip to the NBA Finals. That's right, flights, tickets, and the whole experience. So if you're looking at the board, thinking about what team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. So whether you think OKC is going to run it back, if you think San Antonio Spurs have the team this year with Wemby, you can bet on those futures and take a look at those odds too and see what your best odds are. But visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And in that final segment, we'll have a couple of minutes. So Q and Linc are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. I quickly wanted to get into the 2026 opponents for the Raiders. And we obviously know they're playing their division rivals twice. So, once at home, once in away. But their other competition, I wanted to definitely just mention. So when it comes to their home opponents, obviously they're going to play, the Denver Broncos, the Chargers, and the Chiefs, but they're also going to play the Bills, the Dolphins, the Rams, the Seahawks, which will be pretty entertaining as Klint Kubiak goes up against his former squad, and the Tennessee Titans. And then their away schedule, obviously the Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs, but also the Patriots, the Jets, the Cards, the Niners, the Browns, and the Saints. The game that I'm most excited about there is them heading back to the Bay, because I still think it's the Battle of the Bay. But I will say that I believe they have the 7th or 8th toughest schedule in 2026, which is wild to me, because that's even tougher than last season. And they were, the worst team last season. So, Linc, when you hear those opponents and you hear how tough that schedule is and all the moves that they made in the coaching staff, a young coaching staff, do you think that Raider Nation should kind of not have their expectations too high for this upcoming season, even though there's a lot to be positive about?
What expectations do you have, Raider Nation? Talk to me. Let's be practical. Look, the schedule is what the schedule is. And due to the dynamics with the computer output, your schedule pretty much in advance. It's just the timing of which you face these teams.
Right.
A lot of these teams are strong right now. When you talk about the NFC West and the AFC North with New England and stuff like that in Buffalo, a lot of these teams are strong. I know Miami's trying to find themselves, but it's there. The Jets are going to be better. I mean, look, these teams are there, and your schedule is what it is. Now, where it comes into play, in my mind, it has always been a part of continuity. And the fact is that there won't be a lot of Thursday night games. There won't be a lot of Monday night games. There won't be a lot of Sunday night games. Or more times than not, the Raiders are going to be playing at 1 o'clock, whatever time zone they are in, based on these opponents. That's established based on not only what their opponents have done, but more importantly, what they've done. Now, and for as a player, that allows you to get in a rhythm. If you're thinking about a Sunday night game and then you've got a Thursday night game, I mean, that's hard on the body. And we've seen teams that have had to do that. The Raiders are going to play a 4th place schedule. There's no doubt about it. They're going to play a 4th place schedule. And the way you can turn things around, as we've seen, you talk about New England, who had 4 wins the year before, and now they went on to the Super Bowl. You talk about Seattle and the competitive division that they play in with the Rams and the 49ers. So these are all good teams. Right. But, for the Raiders, it's be mindful. You're probably going to play a lot of these games at 1 o'clock. That helps the player out mentally and physically. It allows you to stay within your rhythm. I don't have to think about those Monday night games, those Sunday night games, those Thursday night games being on the road here and there. And it's going to happen. But also, back to your point, Shantelle, let's be realistic. Raider Nation, what are you truly expecting? I don't expect the Raiders to go to the playoffs next year. I would love it if it happens, but I don't expect it.
Right.
Because there are so many moves they still need to make. There are so many things that have to happen. But I am hoping for improvement. I am hoping for more than 3 wins.
Right.
I am hoping for more than 4 wins. I am hoping that we keep a coaching staff through one season. I am hoping for all these things that happen. That's being realistic. That's being practical. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I look at it the same way. Really. And John Spytek, he said it the day Pete Carroll got fired, that this is not going to be a 1-year turnaround. This is not going to be a Jaguars to the playoffs in year 1. This is not going to be a Patriots to the Super Bowl in year 1. Now, would it be great if it was? Sure. But a lot of times, to his point, those aren't sustainable either. Those are really good seasons. Look at the Commanders, for example. They went to the NFC Championship game. Now they're picking in the top 10. And a lot of that had to do with injury, but that's part of the game, right? That's part of the game. So you've got to be able to have sustainability. And the way to do that is, one, turn this roster over. It's going to become very young. The coaching staff is very young. There's obviously some veterans involved in this as well. And they're going to have to try to grow. Yeah, those opponents that you talked about, those are tough opponents. But, you look at the schedule, you'll see how it shapes out. When do those games get played? What are the weather conditions like? It's like New England. You got New England week 1 and beat them.
Yeah.
They went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so everything matters. There's always factors in it. Who's playing in that game? Who's not playing in that game? Everyone looked at the Washington Commanders and thought, man, that's going to be a tough opponent for everybody. They weren't. Right? I mean, now they waxed the Raiders, but, I mean, a lot of teams did. Right? It just wasn't good. My expectations, I don't have a win total expectation this season.
Not yet.
I just want to see improvement. I want to see this team build. I want to see it look like I understand what they're trying to do. I want to see that they have an identity. I don't want Lincoln in week 8 to join my radio show and be like, Q, I don't know what the identity is yet. And the only reason I bring that up is because we've done that for like 3 years now. We don't know what the identity of this team is, right? There's always been years on top of years where Raider Nation could tell you what the identity of their team is. Over the last couple of years, nobody's had an idea what the identity is. Going back to Josh McDaniels, going back to Antonio Pierce, going back to Pete Carroll. Like, nobody has an idea of what the Raiders' identity is going to be. I want to know what a Klint Kubiak identity team is. I want to know what a Raiders team is under him, under Robbie Leonard as the DC. What are they planning on being? Who are they planning on being? Those are the kind of things I need to know.
There are so many factors that play into it. I mean, first you got the free agency, then you got the draft. You also got preseason.
Yep.
Because the coaches value preseason in different ways. They treat preseason in different ways. There are some times where coaches don't want to showcase their scheme or even their players in preseason. There are other guys who throw them to the flame, run the gauntlet. And then we're sitting there talking about, well, you got the first month to figure out your team. And much to Q's point, going into the season, I mean, I think it was week 10, week 11, still didn't have a true identity.
Right.
I couldn't tell you what it was because it was all over the place. Then you fire your offensive coordinator. I mean, all these changes have happened that have affected the team output. So much to your point in your question, Shantelle, I don't know what Raider Nation is truly expecting, but you got to be mindful. Let's be practical and realistic. What's within reach?
Right.
What are the possibilities? Obviously, go to the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl is one of them, but to go from a 4th place to a schedule to a 1st place, in division or in the playoffs is extremely hard and very rare.
Right.
Not that it hasn't happened, but it's rare. But there are a lot of things that have to be laid before they get to that point.
I mean, think about this. The Raiders had Pete Carroll as their head coach. They went and drafted a running back number 6 overall. So you would think off top, all right, man, you're going to see a heavy dose of the run game. Nope. Didn't see it.
Yeah.
Think about that. Like, it used to crack me up, and me and Ashton would talk about this to the side in the locker room or at practice or whatever. Like, reporters would always say, well, hey, you had 21 carries. That's a career high. How do you feel? And I would look at him, and he'd look at me, and I'm like, how does he feel? He feels great. He's a running back that wants to carry the ball. Like, what do you mean? 21 carries, that's nothing. Hey, Ashton, you had 24 carries today. That's a career high. All right. You know what I mean? Like that. He's one of those old school backs that gets better as he gets touches. So, and I'm not saying go load him up with 35, 40 carries a game. I'm not saying that. But, I mean, a regular dose of 20-plus carries a game is what he wants. It's what he needs. That's the kind of guy he is. So it used to always make me laugh when all of a sudden one standout game, it's like, oh, man, he carried the rock 24 times. Is your body okay? Yeah, his body's okay. That's the number 6 overall for a reason. He ran for 2,000-plus yards in college for a reason. Like, yeah, he's fine. He's good. He's a thoroughbred. And so I used to tell him, we used to laugh, and I'm like, I'm trying to get that question banned, I promise you. He just laughed because he's like, yeah, hey, let's do it more.
Yeah, and I do think that they're going to try to run the ball a lot with Genty because Kubiak loves to use play action. So that's another thing that Kubiak loves to use to play action. But also taking a look at the schedule, they also said that the Raiders have the toughest home slate. So when you think about home field advantage, that's going to be huge. But I think a lot of Raider Nation, if the Raiders do draft Mendoza, I think we're going to see a lot of number 15s in the stands. And I think people, yeah, you would hope so. But I do think that people are going to want to see Mendoza's journey and how he kind of progresses as an athlete in this league. So that's kind of a plus. But coming up on the other side, Linc and Q are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. I already saved some good ones in the chat. So if you're on YouTube watching this, get them in the chat right now, and Linc and Q will answer some of your questions on the other side. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. It's a huge time saver, and it gives you real peace of mind, and it's extremely easy to know that an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150. All in, if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, you just have to file by February 28th. So take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back, Raider Nation. If you like the content, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. It's time for questions and comments with Linc Q. We actually got a bunch in. I got to start off with this one because it's funny and it gets asked every time. Like Q says, with the speculation of the O-line coach, is Lincoln Kennedy filling that role? Linc, it's every episode. Q was right. Q warned me about this when we started this show.
I did.
Read my lips. I don't want it. No. I like my life the way it is. I don't want it.
You know, the funny thing is what's going to happen is one of these times Lincoln's just going to throw us off and be like, you know what? I've actually been thinking about it. Everyone's going to be like, what? And you'll be like, no, I'm just kidding. And that's what's going to happen. He gets asked this question every single time we do a show. He does a radio hit. He's out at Allegiant Stadium. Like everywhere. My man could be at the Angry Crab, and they'd be like, hey, by the way, I want to get that Dungeness Crab. I also want to get you as O-line coach.
I don't want it.
That's a good plug for the Angry Crab, though. Y'all need to go to the Angry Crab, right?
One in one in Phoenix, straight from the nearest location for you, angrycrab.com. There we go.
All right. So Warlock 67 had a great question. Who of our O-line starters from last year are able to transition to a zone blocking scheme?
The three that I think we're going to keep, I really think it's going. I think they can, and it's Glaze, and it's JPJ, and it's Colton Miller. I think they can. Now, with that being said, and to not get it too elongated, because we was, as this year progresses, talking about the zone versus man blocking scheme, you know, you've got to have a simplistic system to where you teach guys to block angles or to block areas rather than man. Mm-hmm. And that can be done. It starts now. It also starts where you address with free agency, because they do need free agent help. So, but I think you've got a good, solid nucleus that can block zone plays. I
think that they can do it as long as they're coached up and taught right.
Committed to do it.
Yeah, and committed to do it. And as I asked Klint Kubiak about that on Tuesday, he said repetition. That's what it's exactly all about, right? Repetition is going to get you to be able to do that. Obviously, you need athletic guys to do that. You have to have a smart, heady guy at the center position. Sure. So we'll see what they do there. And again, I think one of the biggest questions and decisions will be made on that offensive line is, where is JPJ playing? And do that immediately, so you can do that repetition, so you can have him in one spot and know what his expectations are. This is what we need you to do, big fella. This is what we needed you to do, and we need you to do it at a high level, and then go there. The other thing for JPJ, he obviously has to stay healthy, and that's something he hasn't done so far in his career.
Yep. All right, let's go to this one. This is something that I was actually wondering. So great question. Dave S2026. Could you see the Raiders also hiring a senior defensive coach in addition to the hiring of Robbie Leonard?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it makes sense, but Q, I think it's hard to do it now this late, and it's hard to do. We'll probably just get through this season, and maybe next year they go for a veteran. You just don't have them sitting on the couch waiting to be hired.
That's the thing. I think that with this coaching staff that you look at this year, and then when you see it next year, I think it's going to be different.
Yes.
Right. I think that there's the guys that are, I don't want to say placeholders, because that just kind of sounds like they're, short time, but there's a few that are short time. There are some that are going to be replaced after this year. They're holding these positions down because it is so late in the game. Look, you're lucky you hire a coach right after Super Bowl, let alone a whole staff.
Sure.
So that's kind of the gift and the curse. Yeah, it's great that Kubiak was able to go the whole way and win the Super Bowl, and great to get that great, that feel of victory. But now all of a sudden, all the heavy lifting is going on. You got to put your staff together, and most of these staffs are already put together, and all these coaches already hired.
Yeah. All right. So one more really quickly. You guys can be quick with this, but Warlock67 also said, I'm actually surprised that the Raiders didn't promote Joe Woods to DC. Were you guys surprised about that? I think the continuity is still there. So I actually wasn't surprised that Rob Leonard.
Yeah. I don't think it. Yeah.
It's either or.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, Raider Nation, that's it for today. Q and I will be back on Thursday. When Linc's not on the show, people freak out. He has some things to handle. He's a busy man. So nonetheless, Raider Nation, don't worry. Linc will be back on another episode. But thanks so much for rocking out with us this morning. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll be able to talk to you on Thursday.